October 13th, 1972. A chartered plane carrying 45 passengers, including a young rugby team from Uruguay, lifted off from Montevideo, headed for Santiago, Chile. But what started as a joyful trip would soon become one of the most shocking survival stories in human history. This is the true story of the Andes flight disaster and the miracle that followed. The Fairchild FH-227D aircraft carried 45 people, 19 members of the Old Christians rugby team, their friends, family, and 5 crew members. The mood was light. The young men were excited about their upcoming match in Chile. For most of them, this was not just a trip, it was an adventure. But as the plane flew into the heart of the Andes Mountains, the weather quickly turned treacherous. Thick clouds, turbulence, and snowstorms surrounded the aircraft. The pilots, trying to navigate through the rugged terrain, made a fatal miscalculation. At 3:34 p.m., the plane struck the snow-covered peaks of the Andes. The wings and tail were torn away instantly. The fuselage skidded down a glacier at terrifying speed before finally slamming into a snowbank. Out of 45 passengers, 12 were killed instantly. The rest, wounded, bleeding, and freezing, were left stranded in one of the harshest environments on Earth. The survivors faced the impossible. The fuselage became their shelter. The temperature at night dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. They had almost no food, just a few chocolate bars, bottles of wine, and some snacks. Within days, it was gone. Desperate, they melted snow for water. They stuffed the windows with luggage to block the cold. But many were severely injured. Broken legs, fractured ribs, concussions. Some died in the following days. On the 9th day, they heard the worst possible news. The search for them had been officially called off. Authorities declared there was no hope of survivors in the Andes. Inside the fuselage, silence fell. Each of them realized no one was coming to save them. And so they would have to save themselves. By the second week, starvation was setting in. The human body cannot survive long without food at high altitude. They had exhausted all supplies. And then came the most horrifying choice of all. Faced with certain death, the survivors made a pact. They would do what was once unthinkable. They would consume the flesh of those who had already died. It was not taken lightly. These were their teammates, their friends, even their family. But for many, it was the only way to honor the dead by letting their sacrifice keep the living alive. Just as they adjusted to their grim reality, tragedy struck again. On the 17th night, as they slept, an avalanche buried the fuselage. 8 more lives were lost, crushed and suffocated beneath tons of snow. Those who remained dug themselves out with bare hands, only to find their shelter half buried and their hope even weaker. The Andes stretched endlessly in every direction, but 2 men, Fernando Perrado and Roberto Canessa, refused to give up. They decided to attempt the impossible, to climb over the mountains and find civilization. With no proper gear, no climbing experience, and only scraps of clothing, they prepared for the journey. They stitched together a sleeping bag from the plane's insulation. They carried what little food they had left. On December 12th, after 2 months trapped in the mountains, Perrado and Canessa set off. They trekked for 10 days, through blizzards, across glaciers, over jagged peaks. They suffered frostbite, dehydration, and near collapse. But on the 10th day, they spotted something extraordinary. A river, and on the far side of that river, signs of human life. Parrado and Canessa encountered a Chilean shepherd, Sergio Catalan. Unable to cross the raging river, they shouted for help. The shepherd threw them bread across the water and later rowed for hours to alert authorities. On December 20th, 72 days after the crash, helicopters flew into the Andes and rescued the remaining 14 survivors. Out of 45 passengers, only 16 had made it out alive. The world was stunned by their survival. The courage, resilience, and brutal choices these young men made sparked global debate. Some condemned them, but most understood. In the face of death, humanity clings to life. The story of the Andes survivors is not just about tragedy, but about endurance, teamwork, and the unbreakable will to live. It remains one of the greatest survival stories in history. The men of Flight 571 showed us that even in the coldest, darkest mountains, the human spirit can light a path to survival.